Okay, as all of you know, my name is Randy Houchins, father of 2 middle school children. I have analyzed the 2016 Math STAR assessments for 3rd grade through Algebra 1. You can see your handouts. I have also provided a draft of the K-5 and 6 through 8 TEKS to remove the process standards, as well as the methodology called up in the content standards. Some content should be moved between grades and more detail should be added, but please realize that simply removing the process standards will not solve what is wrong with the math TEKS. I hope we can discuss the 4 errors I found in the 2016 STAR assessments. I can also provide specific examples of methodology questions that do nothing to teach mathematics. But first, I want to share a recent experience with reform math instruction. I tutored 7th graders in math last weekend. These students had no confidence that they understood how to calculate the area of prisms. They knew and could write the equations. With a little prompting, they could get the correct answer. But they waited for guidance before beginning the next problem that was very similar. Why the hesitation? And the answer is collaborative learning. They expected guidance from the group leader, who supposedly knows more, so they just sat in silence waiting. It took hours to work 10 problems. A parent from Katy ISD shared a problem involving a number line to teach multiplication. The only answer that the teacher would accept as correct for this problem is 3 times 5 equals 15. 5 times 3 was treated as incorrect. You can see your example of the number line here. And this is what's wrong with how the methodologies are taught and the process standards keep pushing. And that is the problem with the poorly defined TEKS as well. Students may recognize a model or represent something on a number line, yet miss the fact that with the commutative property of multiplication, order does not matter, and 5 times 3 and 3 times 5 both equal 15. Students are missing the bigger picture. I want to highlight some of the worst process and methodology questions I found in the 2016 test. You can go through all 76 pages of my report for an in-depth review, but please see a few I've included here. Below, illustrating a strip diagram with 26 sections, a developmentally inappropriate model attempting to represent algebraic reasoning for 4th graders, a 5th grade problem using an impractical model to illustrate dividing decimals, and a pictorial model illustrating skip counting in 5th grade. None of these will further students' math proficiency, and none offer skills upon which to progress to higher mathematics. I would be happy to discuss any of these with you in more detail. So if you look at these problems, the first one, 3rd grade, problem 14, these models do nothing to teach mathematics. And it's just example after example. All 76 pages will show you even more. And the models continue all the way up into 8th grade. I know that was my bell, so.
Thank you very much for coming, and it's been an honor to get to know you and your friends, and to bring this to our attention. The frustration, obviously, we're having is listening to teachers tell us one thing, okay, and administrator thinks great, wonderful, and we don't need to touch this until the next update. And then we're hearing some teachers that are telling it is very frustrating what they're hearing. And then we have parents that are saying, this is not working. Please do something about it. So we're here trying to say, how can we fix it? You know, and there's obviously different philosophical beliefs within this math family, okay? From Dr. Milgram's, his family coming from that point of view to other math teachers who come from a different point of view. So with all this that you've heard today and what we've been going through, would you recommend if you had a wand to say, okay, I want to solve it, what would you do?
It's a hard question. I've listened to all the testimony, and you hear math educators say there's nothing wrong with the current TEKS, but they're not mathematicians, and they don't have a deep understanding of how to apply mathematics. They're educators. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you talk to the people who truly understand math and how to apply math, you get to the real issues. And I think Dr. Milgram pointed that out very well this morning. If I had a magic wand, I would get rid of everything we've got now and just adopt what Dr. Milgram did in California in the 1990s. That's what I would do if I had the magic wand. I marked up the TEKS based on the guidelines of a streamline, marking things out. I added a few things, but if we're just sticking with a streamline, you can't just take out the process standards. You've got to take out where it calls for all those multiple models. I think there's a lot of confusion between the word process and methods, and I call what's called out in the content TEKS are different methods for teaching each of these concepts, and I don't think that they should be in the content standards. That should be up to the teacher to decide which method helps a particular student. And if a student understands the most efficient way to work the problems from the very start, they don't need to learn 7 other ways to do the same calculation. And they shouldn't be tested on it, which they are now because of how the TEKS are written.
All right. Thank you.
So, Randy, your question, or the answer to your question is similar to the question I asked Dr. Milgram, and that is, if the only antidote that you see for where we are right now is a massive rewrite, and we're prevented by law to do that. So then, do you understand our frustration?
I do, and so I think
and one more point as well. We can't do anything in the world about the assessments. I mean, the tests are what they are, and we have zero control over what the agency decides to test. And your 76 pages of testing examples is very useful, I would think, to the assessment division of TEA, and I appreciate you doing that. I'm glad somebody did. But part of the frustration that I have sitting here is, these test questions, I've used your sample, your examples in speeches I've given to superintendent groups. And said, here's what's wrong with the STAR test, and I've used your examples of that. But beyond just the persuasive authority that we have, which is pretty minuscule, I don't know what else to do about it.
Well, I think you have more power than you're giving yourself credit for, because what I have identified and how I've highlighted the wording in the TEKS, that's what creates the need for these types of questions. So if you strike those things from the TEKS, then the assessments have to follow that, because the TEKS are what the assessments are testing.
Okay. And Dr. Milgram, when I asked that question, I said, so if we strike that information, what we're left with, he said, is even worse than the average set of TEKS that are there across the states, the United States. And so what we would have to do then is rewrite the TEKS after we've made the strikes.
Yes, add back in.
If I understood what he said.
Yes, and he's correct, and I see the same thing. But if you take out the process standards and what's creating the confusion, you're left with facts. You're left with some content standards that are good, true mathematics, even though you're missing some stuff and it maybe isn't in the right order, but it allows the teachers then to focus on what truly matters. And when they get through with that stuff, they're going to know what the kids need to know. Yeah. But they're not going to have to teach 7 different ways to multiply.
And I agree with that. My concern is, though, that if we were just to go through and start striking all of what folks are terming as process standards, that they're still rewriting that's going to have to be done in order to have a good set of TEKS. And it's my understanding we're precluded from doing that at this juncture.
Well, that's why I actually took the effort to mark up the TEKS for you.
I've seen that. But I appreciate that. You've given me the opportunity to express my.
And there's very little. What's in red is what I added.
Okay.
What's highlighted in yellow and struck out is what I'm striking.
Okay.
Very little added, so.
And as always, I appreciate your effort, by the way.
Yeah. Is Julie Guthrie here? She was here just a little while ago. Is she back there?
Oh, when I mentioned last time that the tests this time were better than the previous vendor, I don't know if you all remember that, but you can see that in the percentage of questions testing process. You see it drops off dramatically. Third grade, fourth grade, they're still high, but as you go up in grades, the number of questions testing process drops. Page 3 of the 76-page handout.
Members, assessments is not here, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. On page 4 of 9 of his handout, the short one, the little one, you know what I'm talking about? Y'all got a copy of this? I just want to kind of walk you through. I went back to the assessment to see how well we did on these questions that Randy brought forward last time to see, did the kids get this or not? I just wanted to know myself. And if you turn to page 4 of 9, and I'm going to give you these numbers, and you can look at this at your leisure at home and see what you think about this. But question number 14, problem 14 is testing T 3.5B. Does everybody see where I am on this? I've got numbers for you to write down if you're interested. The way we answered this question, 44, I'm breaking this down in percentages for you. You can put it right beside the answers, F through J. 44% of kids got the right answer. 16% got G, 20% got H, 20% got J. If you go to the next one, page 37, or problem 37, page 5. 18% got A, 10% got B, 11% got C, 61% got D.
What's the right answer?
Yeah, D, was it D?
D's the right answer.
D was the right answer, 61%. That's the highest one in this group. Next page, 10% got F, 18% got G, 45% got H, 27% got J.
H.
Yeah, they're circled, right?
Yeah.
Okay, y'all see the
Otherwise, I
circles?
wouldn't have known, but yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure you know that it's circled, so it tells you which one's got it right. Next one, 5 got A on problem 21 there, 42% got B, 37% got C, 16% got D. D was, B is in 42. 42% of the kids got it right. On 18, I take it back. This was the one that they got the most. 74% got G on problem 18 there. And on problem 31 that Randy gave us, and that's the last one, 68% of the kids got it wrong. 31% got it correct. So, when I see these problems on our STAR assessment, my question is, when 44% of your kids are getting it right, 45% of your kids, 42%, 68% getting it wrong, 31% getting it right. I'm just kind of wondering, are we really assessing the standard at the, I don't know whether it's an instruction issue or whether it's an assessment issue. This is where I'm struggling with what this is.
I can answer that. What's highlighted is, and the reason you have strip diagrams is because it says, represent and solve 1 and 2 step multiplication and division problems with 100 using arrays, strip diagrams, and equations. It's because it says using strip diagrams that you have this. But what's more alarming to me is that there is no calculation at all required for any of these problems. It's just recognition of a picture. So you're not actually testing can the student do the work, can do the computation. And someone else said, STAR scores are going up, and that's probably true in the lower grades. But what do the kids really understand in mathematics if we're testing this and we're teaching this and we're not teaching the fundamentals? And we are teaching the fundamentals, but it's clouded with all this other stuff.
Yeah, I understand that somebody from assessments is here. So, Julie, would you mind coming up here? Just because I just want to ask you, your thoughts about this on on this, because I was a little alarmed actually when I went through and I saw what the low percentage was of the kids that got it right on these questions, and, you know, just kind of your thoughts from assessment, basically.
Hi, Julie Guthrie, Director of Math and Science Assessments for Student Assessment Division. I actually don't have the information in front of me and haven't seen it.
This is it. This is the one that has mine and all, you know, what the percentage was for what kids got right and all that. You said the circled answer. Circled answer is the right answer, so.
So, and I'm sorry, what is the question?
So I'm asking, why do you think these specific ones like that he pointed out have such a low correct response rate? And just from your perspective, do you think it's an issue with the questions being appropriate for the standard, or is it an instructional issue? I'm just trying to understand why would those particular ones be low on the kids that got it right?
Just glancing through it, my guess would be that probably most of them are part of the new curriculum, and if not brand new to the TEKS altogether, it might be new for that grade level. There definitely is like on
Like I was hoping you had some
3-5
background to kind of say, hey, this is the brand new standard, or what. I wasn't sure.
And
where
I'm
we are
thinking
on-
that they are. Like the 3-5B on page 4, certainly strip diagrams is more prevalent in the curriculum now than it was in the past. And you can see that also on the 4-5A on page 5.
So would that be new for fourth grade? Is that what you're
I
saying?
think it's new for both of those.
For third and fourth, both of those standards
Yes.
would be new.
Without having the side-by-side in front of me, I couldn't tell you for sure, but I think they are. And so, you know, that's probably why the students didn't perform as well. And hopefully over time that can improve.
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of heard testimony that, you know, we've got a problem with time to get all the standards in, that, you know, to make sure they're taught with the depth, and we got an issue with the alignment issue. And so that's why I wanted to bring this to your attention, because I think this is a good illustration of, you know, the kids aren't getting this yet. Maybe they will, but, you know, right now the percentages are pretty low. Yes, Ms. Cargo.
Julie, I know all of the STAR test questions are field tested, right? Well, what is the cutoff? Like, how well do kids have to do on the field test questions to make it to the final test? Because these numbers are pretty disturbing with the number of kids that got them wrong. I mean, did they do better on the field test, or?
So you are correct. All of our items are field tested, and we build the test based on our field test data. And we do look at those p-values, is what we call them, the percent of students that got them right. And it doesn't shift a whole lot from its field test data to its operational information, but sometimes we do see some shifts in those percent of kids that got it right. Usually when we're looking at putting together a test, we look for a variety of difficulty level, because the percent of kids that got it right is one statistic that we look at for difficulty level. And so we want a range of difficulty levels, because that's a range of difficulty levels in items. We want items that are easy, and so that most kids can get them correct and have an opportunity to show what they can do. We want items that are medium range, so that those mid-level kids that know a lot but not everything can get some right. And then we do want some of the harder items to distinguish the levels of performance from students that are just at the average level to our high-performing students. And so we do look for a variety of p-values or difficulty levels. When we're
So
putting
are you
together the
saying
test.
you think these particular questions are at the high level of difficulty for the kids?
Definitely, if you're looking at a 45% correct, that would be considered a difficult item.
And I have a theory as to why number 18 was their highest,
Yeah.
because the model doesn't help you solve it at all. They fell back to the standard algorithm to solve this. The model doesn't do anything for you here.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Rowley.
Yeah, Julie, can I ask you a question, and this may call for speculation on your part, but just give it your best shot, or tell me if you can answer that, okay? If we were rhetorically, hypothetically, to revise the different standards that are represented here, for example, on page 4 of 9, question 14. See where I am?
Yes, sir.
And it says, the standard says, represent and solve 1 and 2 step multiplication division problems within 100 using arrays, strip diagrams, and equations. So if we were to take out represent and, well, take out the highlighted language, Mr. Houchins. That's your highlighted language, isn't it,
Yes.
Mr. Houchins?
Yes, sir.
Take out the highlighted language and just said solve 1 and 2 step multiplication and division problems within 100, then this question would take on a whole different complexion, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would probably, if you're looking at the actual question, it might have the same 2 first sentences, but then the second one would just say, what is the number of pickle slices Edward put on each hamburger?
Okay.
And notice
Because it
they
would
don't
be a
have to solve.
solve.
Yeah, so it'd say solve and not represent, and it wouldn't say using a particular process, array, strip diagram, or equation, right? Is that right?
I'm sorry, say that again, I was.
I was just reiterating what you said. I think the same thing. If we took out represent and we just said solve 1 and 2 step multiplication division problems within 100, we wouldn't have the array, strip diagram, and well, maybe we might have equation, but you wouldn't have the strip diagram and array language in there, right?
It's possible that periodically teachers ask for art to be added, and so like if you flip to number 8, you might see one that has it in there, but it actually asks for the numerical answer.
Are you talking about page 8 or
I'm
question
sorry,
18?
page 8, yes, sir. Number
Question 18? Okay, and that was the one that.
So that one is a solve one.
Right.
Where
Okay,
it
let's
actually
look
comes
at.
up with the numerical answer.
Yeah, let's look at page 9 of 9, I guess it's question 31. And that was the one I think Ms. Behort said was the one that was missed most frequently, right? And so in that instance, if it had said, if you took out model and just said, solve one variable equation, or one variable equations with variables on both sides of the equal sign, etc., would that change the complexion of that test question?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
It would have probably been an algebraic one,
Okay.
but it's also possible that we would throw in a model periodically, again, if teachers request that.
Okay.
The reason why this one's lower, and the lowest one you said, is because it was a griddable item. Students didn't have multiple choice, and so, with multiple choice, they can pick out of the 4 options, and therefore they're more likely to get it correct.
Increase the probability of getting it right. There's not a law
I have a
about it.
comment.
Typically on griddable items, we do see some lower p-values. If we did a multiple choice and a griddable that were very, very similar. No, not standard, low.
But I guess to conclude my thought, there could be a means by which we could change the assessment questions depending upon the way we structure the TEKS.
Definitely. I think Mr. Houchins was correct in that if some of the language was stripped out of the TEKS, like your example of modeling, then that would change some of what we do.
Okay.
I know that the teacher from Wimberley talked about a 3rd grade item where the student expectation talks only about modeling, and so that's what our questions do, it models. And so
Right.
depending on, what the student expectation is asking for, that's what we test.
Right, versus solve.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
I have a comment on this one and why this one was so hard for the kids. If the teacher was trying to teach how to use the models, look at this model. You can't actually solve it the way you would typically solve a modeling problem like this, because the 3x on this side is negative and they're positive on this side. So you can't just say, balance the equation, you mark 3 off this side and 3 off this side. And that's why the kids did so poorly on it. Yeah, thank
See,
you.
I did pay attention to them.
I appreciate that.
You did a lot of work there. I wanted you to know we were looking at what you gave us.